Welcome to the GenX Experience, the podcast that celebrates the unique journey of 80s kids navigating midlife. I'm your host, Blythe Alperin. Each episode, my guests and I will share with you the unique differences that define our generation and how we are navigating those differences in the real world. Join me for laughs, insights, and a sense of community. Let's embrace the GenX Experience together. Welcome back to the GenX Experience. This is episode 42. And today we are continuing our series on beauty over 40. I have a really great conversation with my guest, Amy Stone. We talk about what it was like growing up, the pressures that we face, how beauty has evolved, how it affects, younger people today. And we got a little off topic as well because that's what Gen Xers do. We talk about all kinds of things that relate to being in midlife and with a little bit of, 80s, 90s nostalgia mixed in. It's a really great conversation. I know that you will enjoy it. Before we get into it, let me share a little bit about my guest, Amy Stone. She's a media entrepreneur, storyteller, and the founder of the Art of Imperfect Adulting, a growing media platform featuring long-form interviews that explore the messy, non-linear reality of building a life. Amy is a journalism graduate who started her career as a freelance newspaper photographer. Driven by the desire to be able to pay her bills, she took a job in marketing and later client service at a tech startup in the late 90s before building multiple businesses of her own, including an award-winning family portrait studio she ran for 8 years. After closing the studio and moving through fitness and lifestyle coaching, she realized the work that mattered most wasn't offering her own expertise, it was creating a space where real people share real stories about everyday choices that shape a life. Hence why we have the Art of Imperfect Adulting. In addition to being a journalist and a storyteller and the founder of the podcast, she is also a 7-time Ironman finisher, a mom, stepmom, and sourdough baker. She practices what she preaches by embracing the long game, learning through doing, and finding meaning in the journey rather than the destination, which I think you will see how she embodies that in our interview. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Amy Stone. I'm so happy to have Amy on the show to talk about beauty over 40. A topic that I think has like a myriad of different feelings, thoughts. So let's dive into how do you feel that the way you think about beauty has evolved from when you were, say, a teenager till now?
Oh my gosh, jumping straight into the deep end. That is a great question. So, all right, so I just turned 52. So, I was born in the 70s, came of age in the 80s, graduated from high school in the early 90s. And so it was a different time. I will say, I guess what I'll say is I was not really aware of beauty culture as a thing until I was much older. It was obviously around all of the time, but I wasn't aware of it as the way you're not. I mean, you're so submerged in the things that we see and the things that we don't, that you don't actually notice what is going on. But I feel like we didn't have as many choices. But also, I will say this, right? I was raised, my primary parent was my dad. And so I had, I did not have a bathroom or a beauty counter at home with like a mom or a big sister who was like leading me into these things. So as a teenager, I went through, what did I go through? Some of the very famous things like sun in your hair, right? Like,
Yep.
so I put sun in and lemon juice in my hair in the summer. That was such a disaster in my house that my father sent me to like visit my mom with like, please fix this. Please do something about this. But I think we all lived through that. And I wasn't really aware of all of the pressure I felt until somebody said, oh, there is pressure. There is pressure to show up and look a certain way. And there's an impact. The words that I know now, like, through the somebody else's gaze, like showing up for the benefit of somebody else's gaze, that kind of stuff. I wasn't aware of it until I was taught.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think too, one of the things that I think start to influence us, but more like in our teenage and maybe early 20s is like the rise of the supermodel, like that.
Yeah, the Victoria's Secret catalog, the Angels walkway. No, absolutely. And I remember all that being there, but I think we had a little more distance in the '80s in that, like, I was really aware that I was not Cindy Crawford and was not, so and the only places I saw that were in the magazines and the catalogs, and I knew it wasn't me, and I knew it wasn't who I was, and I didn't know that it was not a reasonable standard because I just sort of saw it as being like, they were Martians, and I was a real person. But that's a false understanding because I was very young then. And then as we age, you become more aware of it because it just is. I was more concerned about like how I appeared as a teenager. I was more concerned about how I appeared in my like individual social circle and like for friends and dating and those things. I knew I wasn't going to get a call from Abercrombie and Fitch to be a model. That was not a thing that was on my awareness.
Yeah, I definitely think peer pressure is, or just, being like, it's so interesting as a kid because you want to stand out, but also that's scary. So you want to fit in. So it's like trying to juggle that. And then as a girl, when you're like hormones and things are changing, and sometimes your skin is good, sometimes you have acne, you want the boys to like you. You want your friends also to think you're, pretty or cool or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. But yeah, I do think we did get some distance because thankfully, no internet.
Right, we weren't looking at our picture, at our reflection all day long. So, like, in high school or middle school, going to school with like a pimple on your chin, you sort of like cover it up. You tuck your chin under your collar or whatever. You were just hiding from your like friends, and they all showed up with pimples every once in a while too. Now, so my youngest kid was in middle school during lockdown and he had to look at his reflection in the video camera all day and he like grew his hair out so he covered his face and I kept getting these notes home that he was turning his camera off and pushing it away and there was like a reprimand and finally one of his teachers was like, I do not think he likes looking at his own image on the screen. She was just like, I don't think he's trying to be not get in trouble or not pay attention. I think he's really uncomfortable. And I was like, oh my gosh, aren't we all like really like aren't we all? So I think that is a big difference.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny that you talk about COVID because, like, I think that's when we all were, just bombarded with being online and being on camera. And, you like would try not to look at yourself, but you do look at yourself like, oh, my hair. And then, or you think
Oh,
you look
yeah.
fine. And then maybe they take a picture of the group and post it. And you're like, I didn't look like that, So, yeah. So I can only imagine
Yeah.
the pressure of teenagers, and
Yeah.
kids.
Because it is exactly what you were describing. It's a developmental phase, which I'm not an expert in this, but I have read it in the books as one does, that it is a developmental phase. We become aware of the fact that people are looking at us, right? Because like when you're 4 and 5, you don't know. You just, you're not aware. And then so we do become aware that other people are looking at us. And we can all remember this feeling from being in adolescence where you're sure that everybody in the world is looking at you for your flaws. But the reality is that most people are not paying attention. And it takes a while to outgrow that. And when I get there, I'll tell you. So,
Yeah, because like you're so, everybody's really just so concerned with how they look. They're not
yeah.
really. They might be like, as women, I feel like we go, oh look, she has nicer shoes than I do, or I like her jewelry,
Yes.
or I like something that she has that I want. Especially as teenagers, like wanted to make sure that you had like the Guess jeans and you were wearing the name,
Yeah.
like the labels and everything. Because if you weren't, like you would never say back then, like, oh, I shopped at Kmart or Walmart. Like that was. And now people are like, "Yeah, I bought this at Target. I bought this at Walmart." Like, it's
I spent one morning, I don't remember if it was middle school or high school, but I spent one morning with my close friend at the time before school. So this was early. And what we were doing was trying to get probably a Benetton or Esprit sweatshirt, right?
mhm.
But it was branded with the brand on the chest, and we were pinning it up so that you could see the Guess logo on the back of the jeans because these were presents. Like this is a big deal. Like clothes seemed like they were much more expensive in the '80s. I will say that. I don't know if that's true or not, or if it was just the way I felt. But it was she wanted everybody to see it, and it was really important. And I think it's one of those tricky things where there's a truth to the, like, as a person today, the way I show up, I would say I'm body positive and all of those things. But at the same time, there's absolutely truth to the fact that we are judged by how we show up in our appearance in situations. And so when you walk, the example I usually give for this is if you walk into the bank to ask for a loan, dress for the role, like dress for how you want that banker to see you, not how you're going to show up with your girlfriends on a Saturday night. And that is at the same time, it's a huge amount of pressure that, we feel like, people are looking at us and judging us for just being a human being and having arms and legs and, you know, uh, wrinkles and glasses and all of those things. Like that's a lot of pressure.
Yes, and I distinctly remember in high school, either take the bus or when I could drive, driving to school, and the first thing I would do, I don't know if you did this, is I would go to the bathroom to check my hair, and because I grew up in Florida, and I don't know what it was like, I mean, I know Florida humidity, but from going from my house to the bathroom, my hair would look completely I probably looked fine, but I thought it looked insane. But like just being so aware of like I need to make sure before I even start this day that I look okay because people are going to judge me and or maybe the boy I
Yes.
like is in my first class and yeah, it's stressful being a teenager I think in any era.
I think it's very stressful to be a teenager. I think that there's a lot of pressure on people. One of the things that I love, right, is the Golden Girls comparison, right? Because I will admit, like a couple years ago, when somebody's like, "Hey, we are older than the roles that they played and those actresses," and I mean, we just seem like we're expected to present youth more youthfully for longer than we maybe used to have to. And that's not to say I'm pretty happy that my only hair option is not like short with a perm because that, I'm glad that we're past that, and if you want that, great. But I do feel like for my grandmother and her generation, it was like there was a point where that was the only option. And my grandmother had the short pinup perm, and her hair was slightly blue or purple, depending
I
on the
was just
color,
going to
right? So,
yeah, the
yeah.
blue-haired old
The
ladies,
blue
yeah.
hair, I mean, it was light blue, and I thought it was very pretty, but, I mean, that was everybody had it. My mother-in-law so she turns 88 today. Today is the day we recorded is her birthday. Her generation, they were all doing the blonde, dye in their, like, 60s and 70s, so that was hilarious to me because I would go to visit them, and it would be this sea of 70-year-old women, not a gray hair in sight, just a sea of blonde, right? Sea of blonde. A lot of facelifts, a lot of things like that, really trying to hold on to the youth. And I don't have any objection to it, but I do think it's a tough standard to hold ourselves to because our bodies are going to age. Our bodies are going to age, and giving ourselves permission to age, I think, is just really, really helpful in not being miserable.
Yes, because I mean, I know I've said this at nauseum and people say this all the time. Aging is a privilege. I think we need to think of that way because not everybody gets to be whatever the age we are, gets to have a long life or whatever. And we should, and we're all going to get wrinkled in the end. We're all going to get old and wrinkled in the end. So just enjoy whatever stage you're at.
And I absolutely agree. And the other thing that I have come to terms with is that some of the procedures, not all of them, and I don't judge anybody for, I mean, I had braces, I had LASIK, but some of the procedures that people go through to get rid of the wrinkles and things like that, these are big surgeries. These are big surgeries. I may somehow fell into a rabbit hole about a year ago where like I was seeing like before and afters, like for like facelifts and things like that. I think I must have been like, I was very curious about the deep plane facelifts because it, people look like they're like 20 years old. It's like the
Yeah.
most amazing thing. But anyway, I got into this thing where I was seeing the before and after big, big, big surgeries. These are not overnight. People hide and they don't show up and they don't always show you what you're going to go through. But there's a lot. Yeah, I just not look comfortable. I gotta say. I gotta
No,
say.
no, it does. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's nice that has evolved is like you said before, we have more options, and there
Yeah,
are things you can do that don't have to be the big surgery, but we have so many, such better skincare, more advances. I mean, granted, it can be overwhelming and confusing, but we have better options to, make sure to preserve what we have. And also, you hear
yeah.
people constantly say, wear your sunscreen. Like, that's the best way to prevent premature aging. Wear your sunscreen.
And I am so I came up in a time where sunscreen was around, sort of, but it was like SPF 2 and 4. And it was more likely the coconut scented creams that we put
Mhm.
on. Like, I have a very clear memory of those like scented creams that we put on, but I don't have the memory that they were actually to help us like avoid, it was like to be able to stay out in the sun longer was the goal, not to protect our skin, like sort of copper tone days. And so I live in Florida now, and when I was in my mid-20s, I went to the dermatologist for like the very first time. I had some stress-induced eczema from working in a corporate job, and the dermatologist she put me through under a light to like show the sun damage. Nobody should ever look at their own picture of that. It's not a fun thing. But she very humorously said, she was actually very serious. She was like, you know how in the news there is an article, there are headlines that people should be out in the sun without sunscreen for 20 minutes. And she just looked right at me. She's like, they're not talking to you. You should put sunscreen on your entire body before you leave the house. Never ever go outside. And because I'm fair, and I already had the beginning signs of damage, which I have come to terms with because I really enjoy being outside. And so I feel like I really got to enjoy that and do that. And have definitely been seasons where I look in the mirror and I'm like, ooh, look at the wrinkles, but that's, it's both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Florida, and you can tell I am the color of paper, and so I never could tan, and I did put on sunscreen. I sometimes would still get burned. I'm lucky. I've never done the sun damage thing. I probably don't wanna see it, but, I do remember when they had PABA in sunscreen,
Oh,
and so
yeah.
yeah, it would just be a line of kids, like, we'd go to the beach, and it would just be a line of kids crying because they're like, "Okay, it's time to reapply," and because you've been in the water, then the pat would just sting your face. I remember having like
Yeah.
red marks on my face, and so we hated wearing sunscreen. But I love being outside too. But like, I always felt like I kind of had to stay inside a little more because I would just, the sunscreen wasn't as good back then, and I would burn so easily. Now
And
I,
we do,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And now in Florida, I don't know where you live now, but now in Florida, we take it pretty seriously. Like but I will say this about aging, right? So if you were to go back, and now I understand it more. So like at some point you turn a certain age and everybody in your life is like, welcome to the retin A cream for your body, right? And the retin cream makes your skin more sensitive to light. So if I was to go back, like I used to see all these people all the time outside with hats and the coverage and the white sunblock, and I didn't understand why they were doing that. But now I do, because once you start using those creams, you, you really can't be in the sun for very long. So if you're going to go for like a walk, you've got to like really protect it, and be more cautious. So now I understand. There's this whole like sort of cycle of you don't understand why people older than you are doing certain things until you get there, and then you're like, oh, now I get it.
yeah. It's funny. I've been rewatching the Golden Girl because I don't remember watching it like I watched it, but I wasn't like a huge fan. And it's just funny to me because they're supposed to be in Miami, and they're wearing like sweaters, and they're all
Yes,
covered up, and I'm like, well, yeah, because they're also older than their characters are playing, so they need to cover up. But they just look older anyways. But it's
they
just,
do.
yeah,
I didn't pay attention to it then, but they do now. When I look back on it, I'm like, that is like interesting that they would be. But yeah, exactly.
but yeah, but it did feel like the generations before, like as they got older, would cover up more. Or I remember my mom talking about like, okay, as you get older, you can't have long hair, and she did go lighter for a little bit, and then she started going a little more dark because I think we all were like, Mom, you always had really dark hair. That's who you are. So it's
Yeah.
the old notion, which I think we don't have that anymore, that you can wear your hair whatever color you want, whatever length or style that you want. Um, I think we're better at embracing that than they were.
I think we are, but I will also say this: it definitely is. So I went through, so like the whole perimenopause, menopause thing does a number on your hair, and so I went through that, and now have like a very elaborate hair routine for like vitamins and creams, and which is fine. But also we have like what are they called? We have wigs, and we have the clip in. It's like
Mhm,
the
extensions.
things for the hair and all
Yeah.
these things. There is like it can be a little bit of a you're not doing it right if you're not dressing up to this level, right? So it's like I completely get why people cut their hair short when they turn about 50, 55 because, the texture changes if you're trying to change your color pattern, whatever it is. But then you're surrounded sometimes by people who are willing to go through extensions and wigs and all of those things. Or, hey, you should be taking these supplements. Or if you're doing it right, oh, the new thing that's out right now is like the whole bean talk, like 2 cups of beans is going to fix your life forever, every day. And beans are great. Beans are super healthy, but I don't know that anybody needs to eat two. I just find I'm not the judge of this. I don't get to be the judge. But I do think that it might be slightly excessive to say that every single day of our life we have to eat 2 cups of beans. Right.
That
Right.
does. I know as Americans we don't get enough protein or fiber,
Right.
but I feel like, yeah, 2 cups of beans is a little excessive.
And it's
Um,
just the everyday. It's like you
yeah,
can't just be like, "Hey, you should eat beans on the regular and you should probably be eating more beans." It's like everything we do has to be like, "Okay, you gotta do 75 days hard. You gotta, you have to drink a gallon of water every day. You can't just eat a good quality of protein. You gotta do 100 grams of protein, like, and drink a gallon of water every day." I think there's probably nuance in there for everybody, but that is the way we do things in the United States. It's like, "This is the way to go." And if
right.
not, you're doing it wrong. Eh,
Yeah, because it's always the extreme. It's like
it's always
maybe,
the extreme.
when you're having a salad, add some more beans, or if you make, this food, or like just add some beans to things and try to be more conscious of your fiber
Yeah.
and protein. No, or like, oh no, you've got to go from nothing to 2 cups of beans a day. And I would not want to be living in your house because your stomach is going to be adjusting
Well, and
for
the
you.
skin routines, and the hair routines, there's a similar culture with that too. Like you can go all the way in. So, the 12-part skin routine and what were they calling it? They were doing the overnight things and then they were like peeling off the layers for social media videos every single
Yes.
day. And I was watching those and I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I mean, I'm happy for anybody else who does want to do that, but I don't want to do that. And I don't want the pressure of thinking that I need to do that in order to go outside. So,
Yeah, and it's also you're like, okay, or do you really do this, or are you just doing it for content?
right.
And because it's always somebody really young. And you're like, well, of course your skin's gonna look good in the morning, but yeah,
Well,
layers of
that's the
stuff.
other thing, right? I think, what's the line? Youth is wasted on the young or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You don't realize how awesome your skin is and stuff like that until, it ages a little tiny bit. And then you're like, oh, when I was worried about those pimples, I they didn't have anything to worry about.
My skin used to be plump and everything was in the space it was supposed to be. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then one day you walk past the mirror and you're like, is that me? Or yeah.
Yes, that is a very unpleasant experience, like, that when you catch yourself in the mirror and you're like, "Wow, whoops, look away."
I think I saw a dermatologist. It might be, I think it's Dr. Idris. She has her own skincare line, but before she had that, she was talking about there are certain points in your life where your skin changes. And I think one of them was in your 30s, and I'm sure one of them is your 40s or 50s. But she's like, you just start, you like one day don't recognize yourself, or you think you look ugly or whatever. And it's just because something has changed, and you're so used to looking at yourself, you're like, you can't quite figure out what it is. And it's like, well, yeah, you're just aging.
You're just aging, but I think about the fact that if you were to go back in time, like, how far? Like, 150 years maybe? We didn't even have we would it would have been pretty rare to actually see yourself. You would have seen the other people around you, but not really yourself. There weren't as many mirrors, there weren't as many shiny windows. There were windows, but old-timey windows were, like, not as reflective as they are now,
Mhm.
not as clear. You weren't driving in a car with a mirror, all of those things. So, like, think about it, right? You could have gotten wrinkles and not even noticed it until, you happened to see your reflection. Like, there was no the only way to discover an errant chin hair would be to like actually like feel it on your face or have somebody call you out.
Right.
Right. So you would just happily gone along, and not known that these small changes were happening to your body. And that's because, I mean, there is a disconnect, right? Like internally, we feel like we're like 25, we're still the same person we were, but our body is changing and we don't, we're our own worst critics in so many ways.
We really are a society that becomes obsessed with how we look and how you dress, and, you know, if you're getting older or not getting, like, the whole anti-aging thing, it's like, you can't stop aging unless
Yeah.
you die. If you're dead, then you're stopped. So I wish we kind of changed that conversation. Like, yes, there's nothing wrong with using skincare and certain things to, retinol to preserve and, keep things looking good as long as possible, but you're still going to age and it shouldn't be shameful, especially for women. I mean, there's more pressure on us than men.
Well, yeah, because we're valued for appearance and for that small period of time in our lives where we're able to make more humans, and then the historical dialogue is that, once that's done, our value is kind of done, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
so I think there's a narrative that many women don't actually agree with and would like to change. I think that the kissing cousin to that discussion is the longevity discussion, like people who are trying to do everything they can to live longer. And that also, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not a flawed thing, but it is something that gets stuck in my head because I'm like, there's no like prize for making it to, 105. And I don't know when the last time, you talked to somebody who was in their 90s or in their hundreds. Life is not super comfortable at that point, even if you're in really, really great shape. So I think that both of those are weird sort of arguments. And for me, what I work for myself, and I'm not somebody who should tell anybody else what to do, but is to give myself the space to make my own decisions about how I want to do it. Like I've colored my hair since I was 13. It's not about gray or anything like that. It's just a thing I do. If my hair would go a beautiful silver, I would love it. Right. But it's these little like still weird little things. Like, so it's like I color my hair and I do that because I love it, not because I'm making some sort of statement about my age. And, I'm going to do the skin creams and stuff like that I feel okay with and try and do the best I can, but also really trying to meet myself where I am and allow it and not let anybody else make that judgment. Gabor Mate wrote this book called The Myth of Normal. And in there is a whole section where he talks about how, and it's a couple years old, so however long, like 5, 6 years old, he talks about how we have given a lot of authority to institutions and what they represent. And as a result of that, we have sort of de-emphasized the value of people and their experience. And that's why it relates to this aging. And you probably wondered, you were like, what in the world is Amy talking about? But what we do is, so you've got like a building, like a hospital, and anybody in there who has a degree like an MD or a PhD or an RN or any of those things, they have the automatic authority, even if they're only 27 or 32 years old. But like a person who's in their 70s or 60s is just judged for being the age, and sometimes their experience is not brought into the conversation for the value of what it is. And I think what's more true is that like we've got a lot of lived experience among us and they're both really important. And so it's the balance of that. And that brings in the whole ageism. It's like, when you look at somebody and it's a real thing. It's a real thing that people do treat you differently as you age and at different points and with different markers. It's a very, very real thing. And I would never say that it wasn't, but it's like working towards giving people, the value that they can bring to the conversation for their experience. And that's going to come with some wrinkles. One of my favorite lines about wrinkles is wrinkles only go where the smiles have been. And I think that that's a
Well,
fun thing to think about, right? We get this through experience. But like we said, the double standard, there's the old timey line, which is chicks dig scars, which we tell boys when they fall, right? Like it's fine, chicks dig scars, which is a totally heteronormative statement. And I apologize if I've offended anybody. But the flip side of that is that we judge women for any sort of wrinkle or pockmark or anything like that. And that's not a sustainable standard to apply to anybody.
no, it's not. It's definitely not. And there's a lot of conversation, at least I see online. And granted, I always try to take it with a grain of salt because social media isn't necessarily what's going on in real life. But I see a lot of conversations where, especially around politics, and I'm not getting political, but just to use that as an example, where they're like, we need to get the old people out and only bring young people out. And I'm like, it's not about age, it's about the
Well,
right
sometimes
person.
it is.
Sometimes it is. Yes, there are certain people, like if you have to be wheeled up to
Yeah.
cast your vote, like that's a problem. And some people, there's sometimes with age you get stubborn and you don't want to change, but there has to be where it's like a mix of valuing someone for their lived experiences and then combining that with young people who might have newer ideas but don't have the lived experience, and so they're just going to think, let's go, this is great, this is really extreme, and have no. So, and I feel that way too with like, Gen X is facing ageism in the workplace. There's nothing wrong with diversity in looks, in age, like it's
Yeah.
we everyone brings something to the table, and as you age, yes, you get more experience. Yes, sometimes you get real stubborn and you don't want to change, but
I agree, and I think I would say, and this is a guess because this is not my area of expertise, but it is actually part of the same conversation, right? Because like probably the flip side of the ageism, youth-oriented culture is the shutting down of the conversation. So it is hard to have a conversation with somebody about things that might be happening to them when they're aging, but that should be a part of the process. Like, so if you are, because it is different from person to person, right? Like one person is going to be able to drive till they're in their 90s, and another person might really should stop around when they're 70s, to use like a common example. And I think the thing is to be able to talk about it without having it become so polarized. I don't know how to do that.
yeah,
Currently in the process of trying to convince my father-in-law he should not be driving. I have not succeeded. He thinks that he disagrees. So it's like this three-part thing. It's like individual liberty, right? Autonomy. You're an adult. You get to make your own decisions. And we should be able to have the conversation of, do you have the skills? Are you able to show up and do this? Or is it time for you to consider doing it? There's got to be a way to make it so that it's like an empowered decision. And politics and social media makes it the most extreme of the situation. But in the political sphere, I think we all agree that it's like, hey, there's got to be a way to have this conversation, like without making it ridiculous. Like, is this person able to do this job at this point?
right. Regardless
You
of
know?
like, yeah, their age or their background or, because yeah, and I think the thing too, like I'm trying to think about when we were younger, were we also a youth obsessed culture? Because I feel like when we were younger, at least remembering like being in high school, like we'd have opinions about things and our teachers would be like, yeah, but you're not in charge. And we're like, but what about censorship? And it wasn't
Yeah.
until we were like 18 where we felt like we had the right to participate and say things. So I almost feel like that it wasn't as obsessed, like that it was more about you're a kid, be quiet. The whole, kids should
Well,
be seen and not heard.
I think there's definite truth to that, and I think that the Hollywood angle of that is very interesting. So if you were to look at the movies that were made when we were younger, right? The actors were all a little bit older. It
Yep.
was like now they do that, or they would use age appropriate actors because the rules were not there. So like they would have a 14-year-old playing a 14-year-old. So like Stand By Me, those kids were kids, right?
Mhm.
Today, because they want to have them, it's all about make stuff and do it. You've got like people who are it's the Bridgerton series, right? The people are in their like mid to late 20s playing roles that are supposed to be like 18 and 19. So it's a youth it's like focused on the youth, but it's like a false expectation. Like they're like, at 16, you should look like you're 25. When I was 16, I think I probably weighed 85 pounds. I had braces. I had 3 outfits that I rotated, I mean, it was a completely different standard from the way we live now. Now, the kids in high school, they look like they're 25.
Yeah.
I mean, like think about high school for us. Like, scented gloss was a big deal. That
Mhm.
was like,
Bonnie
like
Bell lip smackers.
exactly. That was the thing. Now they're like collagen mask of lunch.
Yeah. And it's funny because they will wear pajamas to school where it was like we were wearing outfits that kind of looked like we were, adults going to work, but we had I had the worst hair in like junior high and high school. It was the 80s and 90s, so real bad. But we all looked like kids. Like even when you see
Yes.
pictures or videos from back then, I'm like, they look like teenagers.
Just
So,
jeans, t-shirt,
yep,
sneakers, yeah,
shoulder pads.
yeah, shoulder pads. Oh my gosh. Yes, 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 yes. And yeah, no, and I mean, yeah, I agree. I think that you can't escape the impact of like media and beauty completely. And a lot of times it's a lot of fun, right?
Yeah,
To see people, but it's that work of I'm just me and it's okay to be me and my value is not decided based on, the color of my hair or the color of my skin, the size of my body. One thing I do think we've made good progress because in making clothes that fit more people, which I think is really nice. I remember like there were plus size stores and there were other things. And so it's like it's such a horrible way to go through life. Like it's like, we don't sell the clothes for you here.
right. Yeah.
That's like, God.
Yeah, I think the only plus size store I remember was, like, Lane Bryant.
That's the one I remember too, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you were in a department store, it was, like, in the basement or, like, the lower floor, like, in the back as
Right, which
opposed
also horrible,
yeah,
also horrible. So I'm really happy if we're not doing that anymore. So
yes. But to your point about, like, just embracing who you are, I think that, this fashion beauty is fun, especially as women. Like, we get to play around with our hair color, our makeup, like, our jewelry, our clothes. Like, we get to experiment a lot more. I mean, guys do experiment more, although
yeah.
granted, the rock stars back in the day, they were
Right.
definitely
I mean, think about Boy George,
yeah,
right? And yeah, no, I think 100%. And so today in the news, I think it's Millie Bobby Brown is pushing back on the press, like criticizing her body. And I think that's important, she's like,
yes.
because that's like, nobody's taking pictures. There's no paparazzi ever following me around in my life. But, people do look young. Our visions of what we're supposed to look like are formed by what we see in social media now and media. And so I think it is helpful to see people who are like, stop it because the pressure is enormous. And like you said, you can't change it. So, like, what was the name of the model that was wafy in the 90s? The teeny
Um,
tiny one?
Kate,
Kate Moss,
Kate
right?
Moss,
So
yeah.
she had to work to stay that size, sure, but she was that size. That's
Yep.
what she looked like. Like for somebody else who would like to try and strive for that, that would be ridiculous, right? And that's, I think, when things get twisted in the worst way.
Yes, because then it became like, what, heroin chic, and I'm like, "What?"
Oh God, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah, that's not no, nobody
But what are the weird things that we did? The slim fast diet. I never actually did that because those are disgusting. But people did do it.
Weight
And all of the
Watchers,
craze. Yeah, Weight Watchers.
Skinny
Weight Watchers
Craze,
is still
yep,
around, but in a different thing. And it's a
and our
lot of
diets
pressure.
were extreme, right? Like 1,200 calories, and now it's like, you know, that's not enough to no wonder people would gain weight because you technically, you're supposed to be eating I think for me, it's like 1,800 calories or something or whatever, and, it's like we were starving ourselves and
Yeah.
then wondering why we were going up and down is because, nutrition was ridiculous, and but yeah, all those crazy diets and the pills and the
Oh, right.
workouts.
Fen.
Yep.
Fen. That was brutal. Oh my gosh.
Ugh,
Forgot
and there's
about
like
that.
the
I
crazy
never took it,
workouts.
but
I didn't take it either. I know the guests I had on previously, one of them took it and said that, like, almost did her in.
no, yeah, people died.
Yeah.
So I was a runner. I've been a runner since I was a kid, and so I skipped a lot of the crazy low calorie diets because I was really really hungry. And my primary guardian was my father, so I didn't have like an almond mom on my shoulder or anything like that. So it was, eat all you can, and then I was just lucky enough to not have to deal with the other side of it. But I also don't have very good willpower with it. So I do remember like the coaches being like, "Hey, if you want to lose weight, you'll run faster." And I was just hungry, like I'm hungry, and I'm going to eat this food in front of me. So that I bet that's not an intentional thing, or it just was the story of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm glad that it's like diets and the way we think about food is evolving. I mean, granted, you have people online saying this is horrible and this is horrible, and going in the grocery store and holding up something. I'm like, that doesn't make you an expert just because you can read a label incorrectly. By the way, so
Right,
yeah,
and I think that one of the things so now we've got this whole shift, right? So in the '80s, there were 3 networks and, 4 publishing companies, and they were the gatekeepers for all the information we got, and that's all gone. That's all gone. So
yep,
now we have, enormous, avalanche of user generated UGC, like, generated content from people who are doing it. And the thing that is so obvious is the fact that none of it matches. So like it's like an avalanche of information and nobody knows what to believe. But I think everybody sees that there's like, 45 people all saying different things. And to your point, so many people, none of whom are qualified, right? So you have two totally unqualified influencers arguing with each other in response videos. So like, well, this guy. So there's a really entertaining Instagram TikToker, the sober bodybuilder, right? And he does a lot of reactions to other people's things. But the thing is that they're just two people with two different opinions, and there's no way to know if either one of them is right. It's just which one, it's like they're all
right,
wrong. So I think that one of the advantages of all this, just wave of content is that we do get to see so many different sides. But then the disadvantage is there's no easy way to figure out what's right and what's accurate or not. And then you end up with things, and I will get political, where people are like saying, hey, Tylenol causes autism, and other people are like, well,
right.
I know what?
Like, I
Excuse
don't take
me.
Tylenol, I take acetaminophen. Same thing. Like,
Exactly. It's like, okay, who's
right.
driving the ship here? You know, we might need a
Yeah.
little more, you know.
Well, even too with, the beauty influencers, that will use filters and things, which technically is violating truth in advertising because you're not showing something accurately. And even as an adult, you're like, okay, I like that lipstick or that foundation, but I don't know if that's what it looks like. And I think in the beginning, like what was like 2015, 2016, the rise of like the YouTubers, that sometimes I would buy stuff because I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, but this doesn't look like what it looked online. And then it finally was like, oh, because they're using lights and cameras.
Yeah.
And now it's even worse with all the filters. And so, even as adults, sometimes it's hard to discern. You're like, I don't look like that. That doesn't
No,
look
and I think when we talked about like giving yourself permission to be who you really are, I think about that person like it's like the blind date or the realtor situation, right? Like, so like I'll throw realtors under the bus because it's more fun than the blind date. But it's like realtors, there's the joke, which is that like they will use the same glamour shot for like 10 years. So you'll see like the billboard of them, and then you meet them in person, and you're like, wow, you are much older than the photo in your ads, right? And so, and that's the who want like it's like you get to the point where if you've got this forward facing image through filters and creams and nips and tucks, or even it like the tags, like you'll put the elastic to pull your skin back, which is like not even invasive, it's just a dress up sort of technique. You got to do all that, and then when the real you shows up, it's like, I mean, it's putting an actual mask on you, so it's like who's you and who's not. And I think that that's a pressure that we can all decide for ourselves whether we want to do it or not. And I think about it sometimes how if you are somebody whose livelihood comes from how you show up on screen or how you look, so like we'll use a TikToker, a young cute TikToker who then ages, or their body shape changes. That's got to be a huge amount of pressure because you've been very forward facing. When you do that, people feel like they have the ability and the right to like make comments on your appearance, and the pressure of trying to stay forever young in the public eye, that has to be huge. And so like the one of the things that I thought about was Demi Moore, I mispronounced it, Demi Moore, and she's a beautiful woman, and she's in Landman, the series, and she looks like she's a fraction of her age. And it flashed through my mind. I'm like, I wonder how much of this is angles and lighting and how much pressure she feels. Like, could she pick up and go to the grocery store with her kids and her grandkids, or would she have to spend hours trying to look like she does on TV?
right. It reminds me of the scene from Notting Hill when they're like around the table telling like who has the worst story to get the dessert. And Julia Roberts' character is like, well, I haven't eaten a real meal or eaten in like the last 20 something years. And it's like, yeah, when you're in the public eye, like your second job is making sure your hair looks good and your makeup and you're skinny and, having to look good all the time. And that is a lot of pressure. And, if you're younger and you see that, you're like, well, they always look good. Well, no, they don't.
I think that that's the thing is the deal. Like I remember a couple of years ago reading the interview with Brad Pitt where he said, I can't go outside. Like he's like, I can't. And it's like, oh, I wonder how much of this deal it's like we all think that fame is this great deal to be made. But there's a dark side to it.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can be the butt of memes now online,
Yeah.
and the stuff in magazines where it used to be celebrities are just like us, and it would just be the paparazzi trying to get shots of women who have cellulite or they're turned into weird angles so they look
Yeah.
larger or whatever. Yeah,
The
it's
pictures of them walking out of the grocery store with their shopping bags and like I think that's just cruel. I don't want
it,
anybody taking a picture of me in the grocery store parking lot. Are you kidding?
no, it is funny. I went to when I was in New York a couple weeks ago. I went to this gala, and I've seen myself because I wore this like bright like electric blue dress, and I've seen myself in several of the pictures. Nothing up close. It's just like there's me, and I like zoomed in today. Why am I zooming in and analyzing myself? No one knows who I am. It's just me in a crowd. But I was like, is the dress right? Do I look good or whatever? And I'm just like, I'm 51 years old. I shouldn't care what
Yeah.
people think. And nobody's doing that. They're not zooming in on me, but like it's still so hard sometimes to let go of like, what if I look bad in pictures? I hate getting my
Oh,
pictures
so
taken
I
because of
w the talking about beauty standards. Okay, so the one of the popular products right now is like the covers for the cakes. So they shape your boobs and they hide
that.
your nipples, right? So, because we're supposed to pretend that we don't have them,
Right.
like these, right? Because that's a great option. If you had to have them surgically removed, that's the look we're looking for. Anyway, and on the flip side, there's also a product that is a bra, and it has built-in like beautiful nipples to show up like that, and they're always there. And I'm like, so you can't win with
No.
this. You can't win with this. It just has to be the way. I just like it's just so funny to me. I'm like, I don't know. Like, but I'm also not gonna. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm immune to the pressure of it.
I mean, because they always say as you get older, you don't care. And I'm like, yes, there are things that you don't care about, but there's still, I feel like there's still, at least in me, a part of me that's that teenager that is insecure about the way she looks and, what other people are going to think about me. And if someone takes a picture of me, am I going to look bad? Cause like I went to an event here and they took pictures and I knew, so like I'll even try to make sure I dress that looks flattering in photos or whatever,
Yeah.
and my hair and they posted a picture and my eyes are closed and I am dead center. And it kind of made me angry because I'm like, it's very obvious. And I'm like, there were other pictures. I'm like, did you just look at yourself? Because when I post pictures of a group, I want to make sure everyone looks the best they can. Maybe just because I'm extra self-conscious, but like it makes me want to not go to events because I'm like, can I just enjoy an event without having to worry about how I'm standing or my hair or what I'm wearing and whatever? And I'm like, that's my teenage self that's just still lingering under the surface.
I don't know if it goes away. I mentioned my mother-in-law earlier in the discussion, and I'll bring her up again. A couple of years ago, like, but very recently, we were sitting together and she was like, well, I'm going to go on a diet. I'd like to lose some weight. And I just looked right at her and I was like, oh, can we just like let this go? I mean, you're 80. Like, I was like, let's let it go. Like, just eat your food, enjoy your life, be happy with every day. Like, swim Sports Illustrated is not calling you for the swimsuit edition. But more around there's health and there's size and feeling good in your body and so on and so forth. But it's like the self pressure of like I should be smaller. I think it's worth the work to do it, but it's very hard. It's very, very hard. And I think it's an interesting thing about looking good in the photos. I'm thankful for people like you who will look at a group photo and make sure that everybody looks good. I've had so many ridiculous photos of me taken in my life that I'm fine I just make fun of myself if I show up looking like a fool in a photo. But I do when we go to group things. I'm careful who I choose to take the photos of the group things. Like this person does a good job and this person does
Right.
not. And there's one person in my friend group, and they take candid photos. And no one ever looks good in the photos. They just run around these
Mm.
social things, taking these unflattering photos, and they post them online. And we all look terrible. And so we have evolved as a group that when we see him, we call him out, and we're like, "Everybody, watch him, pay attention, like make sure." It's on you. You have to make sure he's on the prowl. Make sure you're ready to be photographed.
'Cause there's a skill to taking candid photos. Because if you see
Yeah.
professionals do it, you're like, well, that person looks great. Or they catch them in a moment where they're not making some weird face or, they're standing weird. And it's an art form. And yeah, just everyday people, it's not. Yes, we have our iPhones. We think we're professional photographers, but not all of us are.
Exactly. And at events, I mean, I think hopefully you can do a good event planner should have photos that are like scheduled. So you have like photo time. And I don't know what kind of event it is because they do it at fundraisers. It's like they want photos of people to like use for publicity and all of the things. But then there should be like relax and enjoy time.
Yes.
Like nobody, once the liquor has been serving for a certain amount of time, the photographer should be sent home. Those photos should never be published.
Yes. And I think like smaller events, like ask people before, like you're trying to create content for yourself. That's great. But maybe I don't want you to film me while I'm eating or like there was one picture I saw myself and I'm laughing. So it's candid, but it was really unflattering moment. And I was like, that's the picture you posted to me. Maybe you could have asked me because I'd have been like, please don't post that. And granted, I
Yeah.
shouldn't care, but it's not like when we were growing up, you didn't like a photo, you could just tear it up, throw it out, except for my mother. We had family photos taken. I think I was in 7th or 8th grade and I look horrendous. My hair is terrible. I am so ghostly pale. I'm wearing a very pale dress, like probably some Laura Ashley dress. And I hated the picture. And I'd be like, can you not put this on display? And she's like, I love it. We all look good. And it just sat there for years and years. Even after our house got destroyed by a hurricane, I was like, did that photo get destroyed? No,
Oh, and it was still there.
it was still there.
I have a school photo. This is like such a ridiculous story from my childhood. So it was elementary school, so I was young. And picture day, which was on the calendar and so on and so forth. I was told that I needed to take a bath and wash my hair, right? And I was like, I took like a little chunk of my hair and I like waved it in the bath water. And I was like, it's done. See, my hair is clean. And in that photo, which is preserved forever, in a family album, it's like a totally different color. Like I had highlighted like one 3-inch strip of my hair. And it's like, I mean, I don't know. No one ever sees it. It's like, I have this like, it's a plaid shirt with like this ridiculous little frilly collar. And I'm just happy as can be in the photo. Just every time I see it, I'm like, I've never been good at following directions, I guess.
Oh God, picture day. I always felt like that was so stressful, like, what am I going to wear? And then if your parents, especially when you're little, they're like, okay, you better smile and, do this. So you're like, what if I get it wrong? Cause they're paying for it. And then in high school, you're just, cause you're going to give it to friends. You're like self-conscious about what you're going to wear. And yeah, I feel like I need therapy for, for the photo trauma.
I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't and when I go to events, like, half the time, like, I was at another event the day after the gala, and first at the gala, I didn't even get a picture of myself in my dress. I totally forgot, and then when I was at the other event, I forgot to, like, take pictures because I was just I'm still in the mindset, like, I just wanna enjoy
Yeah.
things and not constantly be filming and have stuff for content because I think you just miss out on.
I think you do. The other thing is, I mean, the best photos, right? Like the photos you want, are the ones that remind you of that great time you had at the event. So, and win those. And that's also, I think, when we're complimentary to ourselves, if we don't look fantastically. So somebody catches you, if you win an award and somebody catches you in the emotion of joy during the ceremony, even though it might be not like a cover ready photo, it's like that was the real moment. It reminds you of that positive experience, which is different than everybody get together and
Right.
one person is looking off.
Yes, I always
So
feel like I'm doing like the putting my head out and doing it because I had my pictures taken
yeah.
especially for my website, and she taught me little tricks, and I feel like I still do that, and yeah, but I am glad that we grew up in a time where, yes, we were self-conscious of our skin and our hair, but we weren't so self-conscious that we didn't go and enjoy and live our lives. Whereas now, because people are constantly wanting to take pictures, I feel like there's more pressure to your weight and your hair and your skin and this and that. And we just lived our lives, and there are some pictures.
There are some pictures, and I think it was more of, and I'm not the expert, like, I think there were always probably people who became so focused on it that it was disruptive to their life.
Yeah.
But I think that it was easier to see the disordered line than it is maybe today because we each have such a much higher visibility, which isn't business, right? We're always talking about raising visibility and stuff, but we are so much more visible because we're on video call all day long. Oh, that's a thing. Remember, so when I was a kid in the Jetsons and it was video call, it always seemed like it was such a great thing. But I yearn for the freedom of just being able to answer the phone
Yes.
and not be on camera sometimes. And I do love the video stuff, but it's that, just be able to talk and you just wear, you're sitting in this, like nobody can see you. Nobody knows. You could have broccoli in your teeth and nobody knows. There was freedom in that.
Yes, the
And
conference
now if you
call,
call people, they're like, what do you need? And
right?
send me a text.
Nobody wants to answer the phone.
Me
Yeah.
too. Me
Well,
too.
even with FaceTime, which is nice because when I wasn't living near, like, my niece and nephew, and when I get to see people, but I still be like, stop looking at yourself. I'm like, first of all, my niece and nephew don't care what Amp Life
Right.
looks like right now, but I am just so, I'm like, why does it look like that? Why does my face or my head look?
Oh, it's
Yeah.
if the FaceTime camera is the least flattering
Yeah.
camera outside of, what the most unflattering mirror in the world I find is, for some reason, which I think is hilarious, at the beauty salon when you're getting your hair done.
Yes.
Why is that like such an unflattering? Like you would think that that is the place they should make that the beauty filter so that you feel beautiful looking in that mirror, but it's like harsh.
Yes.
fluorescent light. It's like, wow,
And I'm like,
I
"What
look
is" I
terrible.
yeah, I'm always looking at, like, my neck. I'm like, "What is going on here?" Or I'm, like,
Do you remember the
overanalyzing.
book that Nora Ephron wrote in it's probably in the 90s or the 80s? She wrote a book that was like, "I'm sad about my neck." And, like, it was funny then before I understood what she was talking about, and then, like, when I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, what is what is this?" Like, but the nice thing about it, one of the things that I have been reflecting on, and this does have a lockdown element, like, so my social circles got interrupted like everybody's did during lockdown. But at least when we were in middle school and high school and we were all going through we were surrounded by other people that were going through the same thing. Because it is nice to have other people near you so that you can be like, what is this? And the person next to you is like, I know. Oh my God. I, like that's so I think that that's one of the differences. It's like when we were coming of age and sprouting boobs and figuring out how to diet and do those things, we were surrounded by other people that were the same age. And now it's not that we don't have people around us, but it's we have to work a little harder to get that group of supported people around
Yep.
us that will encourage us and be like, normal.
Right, and we're not seeing people, all of our friend group every day in real life where, yeah, we were like,
We
"Oh"
used to, right.
yeah, like, "Oh, my
Yeah.
hair looks just as frizzy as that person," or like, "I feel just as awkward as they do," and yeah, it's technological advances have, like, their drawbacks and their positives, and it's trying to navigate what is helpful and what's not.
Exactly, and we do where we show up in with our we talked about aging and things like that, like, so Gen X is the left out group,
Mhm.
which I love and seems so true. It's so disturbing how, like, accurate some of the Gen X stereotypes are, like, I love it, and I'm just like, "Wow, that is freaky." But so, we were the analog generation, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have those things, but we are generally pretty technologically unafraid, jumping in, like, I will jump into code a little bit, I'm like, I might break
Right.
it, but I'll get in there, right? And then the folks that are younger, that are native to the technology, and they just have a completely different way of doing things. And when we were talking about like that, it's like it's so funny because it just is different, and it's so hard to understand the way people who are in a different expertise are doing things. So they communicate differently,
Mhm.
So like my young kids, they communicate on messenger systems almost exclusively, right?
Yep.
Whereas I communicate on text message,
Yeah.
telephone, and my in-laws, they will call you, and then while you're on the phone with them, they will convert the call unknowingly to a video call. They're unaware.
Yes. And you're just
They're
looking at their
unaware.
ear.
Right, exactly. And they're just looking at and it's like, "What is happening?" They don't even know. "Did you call me?" "No, no, you called me." So on all of that. And I don't know what the future will hold, for the younger generations. I do know that, that I'm not gonna understand it, and they're gonna be fine.
Yeah. And I do hope that they learn, especially women that are coming up after us, because the conversation about perimenopause, like we are being loud about it, and millennials are joining. Like I hope that they're not as unprepared as we were, and they can transition into this time of life and not like shocked and not trying to find doctors, and being ready for like your hair is going to change, your skin's going to change, your weight is going to like there's going to things going to happen, and it's not going to be like you're having a meltdown and about it
I
and you
hope
don't
so
know why.
too. I hope so too, but so they call that being like so information is siloed, right? So like the information is siloed into certain things. So like if you got a midlife, so like AARP is a publication for retired people. People who are 25 are not reading the magazine. And so the challenge is, we have all these midlife people. We're all talking to each other about perimenopause and menopause, which is great. It's been super helpful. And miraculously, all the online doctors, I'm a big fan, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. It's very, very helpful. But I think the challenge is how do you talk to the younger generations so that they're ready, and get them all in the same room, like so that it's not a surprise. So, and I'm not the person who's necessarily going to do that, although I do try and do like age group agnostic stuff. Like, it can be very circular because like once you're through it, you don't necessarily turn around and tell the person after you. So it's like once you've survived being the parent of an elementary school person, you no longer go to those PTA meetings, like you're done. And so I hope that it is true. But we would like to believe that we're improving the generations behind us, but when it comes to like women's empowerment and certain things like that, we're not actually moving as fast as we would hope we would be, and some scary stuff coming out. Like there's like four or 500,000 women who left the workforce in 2025 because of economic conditions. Which the part about that that's scary is it still seems to be that's the group that feels it first.
Yep.
Those are the first people that opt out, and that has an impact on what we do. And I'd like to say that the girls who are coming of age now will have body positivity and feel good, but they still walk by the Victoria's Secret models and, look that way and have a standard of that sense of beauty. And the movie stars, are still out there looking phenomenal and doing those things.
And all
So
the influencers that they're seeing, and it's you want to think that we're making progress, and we are making a little bit,
I
but you're
think we
right.
are, but I think,
There's
yeah,
still, there, because I think technology has added another layer to it. Like it's trying to adapt to that, and
because I don't know how you went through, or like, so it's like there's no limit to what you can find online. You can come up with the most obscure question and search for it online, and you'll get an answer. But as we age and we come into different things, I don't know what's happening at the beginning of it, So it's like, perimenopause. I didn't, it's like I just thought I was like grouchy, like I was like, I am annoyed. And then it took a while before I had that. And there's that interim period where you don't need, I won't use a paramount. I'll use a pregnancy example instead because it's funnier, the story. So like my second pregnancy, I was on the phone with one of my girlfriends, and I was on a tear. There was nothing that was going to make me happy. I was just complaining. And I'm generally obnoxiously optimistic. And my girlfriend said to me, she's like, "Hey, this is not like you. Could you be pregnant?" And I was like, "No." And then I was like, wait. I was like, maybe I am. And so it's like, but there's that window where you don't know what's happening. And so there can be the information can be right in front of you, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll look the wrong, you won't know.
that's very true. Well, we're almost at the end, but I want to ask one final question before we talk a little bit about you and how people can reach you, and where you want people to reach you. So thinking about beauty back in the day versus now, are there trends from back in the 80s or the 90s that you loved that you wish would come back, or and vice versa? Are there trends that you hated that you wish would never come back?
So I'm never going back to Ash West jeans. And I feel like I've had a chance to, like right now, some of the trends from the 90s are back, and I'm like super
Mhm.
excited about that. I have a fantastic jean jacket. Like I have repurchased a leather jacket that I had when I was in high school. I love but some of those things, and I think that that's great. But Ash West jeans did come back, and I looked at them in the store, and I was like, oh, yeah, no,
No.
I don't. I did. Unnecessary. So that was good. That was a part that was very, very nice. And one of the one of the things, beauty standards from back in the day that I loved. So I do highlights, right? Which so when I was younger and I started doing highlights, they put that, and they still use it. I don't know what for, but I
Oh,
will not go
yeah.
back to it. They used to put the cap on and
Oh,
rip your hair through.
that was
That
awful.
hurt so much. So and so I'm all about the foils. I think that's like such a much better process.
And it looks better
Um,
too because it was just like strips of hair, and you could
oh,
see, yeah, it was not worth the pain that you went through to, yeah.
it was. I have very fine straight hair. And so I spent a big chunk of my teenage years trying to get my hair to have any volume at all, and never worked. There was nothing. It doesn't work. So I don't miss that. So I'm happy about that. I used to have hot rollers
Mhm.
from back in the
Mhm.
day, and my 22-year-old daughter uses hot rollers, right? And it was like we searched for mine in the garage. She was like, "Do you still have them?" And I was like, maybe. Let's go look. But I didn't. So we had to rebuy those. And I crack up that style is back. and doing those things. So I think that that's very funny. I have been using the same like mascara since I was like in middle school. So I was at Sephora with one of my kids buying makeup, and they were looking at things, and I was like, why would you buy this designer mascara? We're going to go to CVS and pick up the Maybelline pink and
Mhm.
green that is
Yeah.
like the gold standard,
Yeah.
like there's no, so
Which is amazing that it still is today that people will, still talk about. And yeah, I mean, drugstore mascara is probably sometimes better than
maybe.
the high
But okay,
end.
so what I use in the day. So I used to use a ridiculous Clearasil wash like for my face it's a miracle that I have any skin. And I used to use an exfoliating sponge that was basically like designed to rip my skin off, and I thought that that was a beneficial thing. I'm glad I don't know if that still exists.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah, you're like, "I gotta
The
scrub."
Noxzema
Oh,
cream, which you felt it, you knew it was working because it tingled. I think that was the slogan.
I think you're right. It's working because it's tingling. That's not
It cannot have been good. It cannot have been good. But yeah, those are some of the ones that I remember.
yeah, no, those are the hot rollers that and I think they're also using now the Velcro rollers and
The Velcro rollers I do still have. I don't ever use them for myself, but I do. I only know that I still have them because I dug them out. Those also, when you would get like a knot in there and be like just basically ripping your hair out. So that I'm happy to not go through that. I basically yeah, no, I've just accepted my fine hair and blow dry it, and maybe I'll try and tame down the frizz with a flat iron
yeah, I
if
mean,
I'm
the
gonna.
things we put our hair through in the '80s and '90s.
I've never stopped because like I swim and I spend a lot of time in the ocean and do those things. And then I also color my hair. And there's I, I used to, when this is about 10 years ago, I went from a chlorinated pool to my hair color appointment. My hair was like, I was still wet. And the poor stylist who was about to take all of my money for this, she just was like, so sad, like touching my hair as I smelled like chlorine in the thing. And I
Oh,
was like,
no.
she's like, we might need to do a deep conditioner also. And I was like, sounds good.
Whatever you gotta do. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about beauty and other things as well. I know you have your own podcast, and if people want to tune in or even pitch to be a guest,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit
Let me
more about
tell
it.
you all about it. So, my show is called The Art of Imperfect Adulting. And what I do is I share stories of the choices people make, the changes we go through, all on this like long path of being an adult, because it's a long road from 18 to hopefully 100. And a lot of things happen. So, I share these stories of experiences and transition, creating a space to elevate the voices of experience. And so that's what I do. I call it The Art of Imperfect Adulting. You can find it on all of the audio platforms, podcast. You guys are listening to this on a podcast, so you know how that works. So you can search in the player, and it is like all fun things also on YouTube at Imperfect Adulting. And if you have a story you want to tell, I'm always looking for stories that folks want to tell. So you can find that I try and put it everywhere. So if you look in the show notes on any of the platforms, there should be a spot in there that says, here's how you are a guest. And there's also a page on the website, imperfectadulting.com/be a guest with little dashes between the words. I've been very fortunate that hundreds and hundreds of people have said, hey, we'd like to be on the show. And it's super fun. And I love all the things about it. And I encourage people to listen and join me and all the fun stuff.
Awesome. And I will include that information in the show notes, of course. And yeah, I mean, we're Gen Xers. We have lots of interesting stories to tell about being an imperfect adult because this journey it's interesting.
It is.
It's very
It
interesting.
is. Absolutely.
Thank you again. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Blythe.
Thank you again to Amy for that really fun conversation. All of her information will be in the show notes, so you can submit yourself for her podcast, listen to her podcast, connect with her. I really enjoy talking to Gen Xers, obviously, since I have a Gen X podcast. It's so interesting to hear different perspectives and share about, our growing up and see how we, things were similar or different, because sometimes, you never know. And then also do not forget, we are in season of our first book club. We picked the book A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle. I will include, along with Amy's information, a link in the show notes for places you can buy the book. Maybe don't buy it on Amazon. but get it wherever you want, library, listen to it. And then in December, we will be talking about it. So if you'd like to be part of that discussion, be sure to email me. You can find my email in the show notes as well, or you can contact me on TikTok or Instagram. We are the Gen X Experience Pod. And without further ado, my fellow Gen Xers, until next time, don't you forget about me, because I won't forget about you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Gen X Experience. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it on social media or with a friend. We'll see you back here next time.